Just let people know how goofy I was. Flashlight's on. Okay, glad to see everybody today on this, well, somewhat beautiful Transfiguration Sunday. Extremely early in the year for, I don't know how much sooner it gets than this. Yeah. If it got much earlier, it'd be right after Epiphany. I mean, you just feel like, yeah. But Transfiguration Sunday is here. It is interesting aspect, and I'm sure that there are a lot of people who, I mean, it's in my head because we talk about these kind of things all the time in my circles. But like in everyday life, when you're walking around out there, you go, "Oh my gosh, you know what? It's Transfiguration Sunday coming up," and you go, "Oh yeah, let me think about that a while." I don't know that people really do that, well, seeing the head shakes now, I know they do not think about that, but that it is an important aspect of the journey in which we talk about from here until we get to the cross, because it's in the three synoptic gospels. Synoptic means like those three gospels that are like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and they're pretty much the same. There's one interesting little piece. I'll talk about that today, or just ask y'all's opinion, because I have to say this again. I've doing this for 29 years, plus a few years prior to that, before I was ordained, and this week was the first time I ever noticed this one little thing that's different in Mark than in the other two, and I was like, "Where have I been?" But just to ask y'all, just because I have no idea about why it's like that, and so just hear what y'all might want to say. But this notion of Jesus goes up the mountain to be transfigured, and his face is changed. I mean, he has a facial, and his clothes change, as we hear. And so what does that mean to us? What does it mean? Or what do we hear when we hear that? Also the characters that are in play. And from this point on, it's like when Jesus goes up this mountain, after he comes down, everything else from this point on is about Jerusalem and the cross and how he's heading there. And then, and to think about this, I'm so much more aware, I think, because of going to the Drake and reading through each gospel to them. We just read through the gospel. And now that I'm in John, with Denham, I'm trying to think, I'm going to be finished in the next week or so, and now I don't know what to do, because I'm like, I'm going to have to go to a different kind of book with them. We're going to have to go to, am I going to read Lamentations? Am I going to read an epistle? Because I've always done these gospels. But again, even in John's gospel, 21 chapters, chapter 12, they're in Jerusalem. And so much more than ever before, I'm so aware of how much of the gospel each one of them is taken up in the last week of Jesus' life, and just how important and crammed into that last week our story really is. But Transfiguration kind of kicks that off. It kicks it off for us in the story because we know this Wednesday, always when you have Transfiguration, the next Wednesday is Ash Wednesday. And then you go through Lent, you hit Easter. So Transfiguration kind of starts that transition. So Jesus goes up this mountain. He takes only the three with him, his three buddies, his faves, the inner circle. And then he comes back down. And so it's just interesting to me how important it plays, and then how even someone who's done this for a long time forgets in the middle of the week, that, oh my gosh, we're here at Transfiguration Sunday. So let's listen. Let me find it. I've got it in my, pardon me. And think of this, here we are in 16 chapters of Mark, and this happens in chapter 9. So how much of the gospel is left? 2 chapters later is, 2 chapters later he's in Jerusalem. Okay. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you're going to read it. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. Thank you for reminding me. I'm a little off today.
It's okay, Doc.
Yeah.
Mark 9, verses 2 through 9. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling bright, such as no one on earth could brighten them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us set up 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice, "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead.
Familiar. I mean, really familiar. I mean, we talk about it every year. Okay, so what did you hear this year? What is Transfiguration even? Does it play any part in who we are? We shall all be changed. Okay.
Years ago, I had to do the children's sermon.
Mm-hmm.
Transfiguration.
Mm-hmm.
And I took a little transformer.
Uh-huh.
And showed them
Mm-hmm.
what it meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah, change. That's good.
That's what it
Yeah, right. I used to do the chemistry side. I'd bring in the things where you could pour these things into it, and it would be a color, and then it would change everything white and all that sort of thing. It was really cool, but then kind of started thinking about it from liability perspectives about, pouring things around kids. Then I decided, probably better not do that. But yeah, you're right, that there is this, obviously it's wider than anybody could get it. Clorox ain't gonna take it out. Boom, he's moved. So, interesting, right? So, and he only takes 3. He doesn't take everybody. Just takes the little inner circle, Peter, James, and John. Nobody else.
James and John, the sons of Zebedee.
Yeah. Ain't taking nobody else. Andrew, you can't go this time. Stay home. Interesting.
Why did he only take them?
I have no idea. I mean, he has separation with them on several occasions. And then in Mark chapter 13, he brings those 3, but he brings Andrew with him too, to do the apocalyptic discussion. It's like, Okay, why do you get included there? Why? Why do you do that? You know, I don't know. I find it really interesting.
I see him adding Andrew because Andrew had followed John, the
Yeah.
baptizer,
Yeah.
who was definitely like with
Who, yeah, and Andrew's the one that brought Peter in the first place. Yeah, why did he should, hey man, I should get some credit for bringing him along. But, nope, interesting.
It seems like when those three
Mhm.
observed the transfiguration,
Mm-hmm,
they had any remaining doubt
mm-hmm,
that he was the Messiah, that would wipe all of that away. No doubt.
yeah. And yet,
All the disciples
right,
to see that.
yeah. You would think a moment like that would kind of push all other doubt away, but yet, what is it happens when, you know, yeah, yeah, interesting.
I've often wondered, you hear stories of Christians who were murdered, in the Middle East,
Mm-hmm,
because they,
yeah,
admit to being Christian.
right. They're martyred for their faith.
Courage
Mm-hmm,
in circumstance like that,
yeah.
or would I go, I don't know.
I don't know. Oh, that's a good question. I don't know that I really want to find out, but
That's a huge question.
yeah, no,
Even not even in the Middle East.
yeah, maybe. I don't know. Interesting to see. Yeah. Yeah, they were frightened. Okay, think about that. Suddenly, as y'all have heard me say before, I don't exactly know how they know it's Elijah and how they know it's Moses, unless they had jerseys on that had their names, which makes sense to me. But I mean, I don't.
Yeah, they wouldn't have had pictures of it.
No, they don't. But there they are. I mean, come on, y'all. Wouldn't you be afraid? I mean, hey, look. There's Elijah and Moses standing up at the front of the sanctuary. How do we know it's them? We don't know, but it's them.
Will they announce who they are?
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying. Yeah. So, I mean, but I mean, just saying, I would be,
But did they still try to equate
I'd be
all the
scared.
stories back to Moses when they were telling the story?
mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, these are the two major figures of their
He
day.
mentions Moses' name
Well,
a little bit.
I mean, Moses is the great,
Better seat, I don't know.
he's, maybe he's got a halo. I don't know, but, Moses and Elijah are the two key figures of their day as far as their history. Elijah is the top prophet of the country. I mean, he's the one. And Moses is the number one lawgiver. In the day of Jesus, there was only two parts of what we call the Old Testament that were pretty much solidified. We have to keep this in mind. In Jesus' time, what we call the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible was not finished, closed. When we closed for another 60-something years. And so the only two pieces that they had installed at that point was the law and the prophets. The writings weren't, figured out. They weren't, like the book of Daniel was not included. We include him in the prophets. He was not in that day.
And then the Ten Commandments, when Charlton Heston comes down, he's
Yeah, Moses does get, there is a transfiguration. Yeah, that's,
trying to relate it to this as well.
absolutely. You have a mountain experience. That's absolutely. And throughout Scripture and throughout other religions as well, mountaintop experiences are for not magical. I wouldn't have said they're magical, but they're not bad. I mean, they're heightened experiences through all different kind of religions.
Is this the second time that the voice has been heard from above?
So, okay, what's the first time? Baptism. And the voice at baptism says, This is my beloved Son. I'm well pleased.
Can't
And
you
this,
point to both of those as kind of a sign of the Trinity?
okay,
Because you had,
please say more. No, I'm serious. I mean,
Yeah, I mean-
a Trinity.
the dove coming down.
Yeah.
You were interpreting those as
Yeah.
Moses and Elijah.
Yeah.
That could be the Spirit, I don't know. You've got God speaking.
Yeah.
You do have the Son.
Yeah. I've always interpreted, or the way I've read it and understood it, that you have the great lawgiver, you have the great prophet, and then suddenly they're both gone. That they're pointing, that you have these two parts of Scripture that were their only two pieces of Scripture of their day. That they were kind of pointing to this guy as the Messiah. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. So you have that. And then suddenly they're gone, and then it's only Jesus. So you go, maybe there's a point there. Yeah. That it's just him. That's who we're looking to. You have the voice that's at baptism. This is my beloved Son, whom I'm well pleased. And here it says the same thing, but it adds one more thing. What's it say? Listen to him. That's kind of interesting too, right? Listen to this guy. You might want to listen to him. He might have something to say to you. And what's he say to them all around this? 3 different times all around this, the Son of Man has to come, be crucified, died, and resurrected. And he's...
Don't say this is over, right?
Yeah, and this is...
Fear of them being on the cross next week?
Yeah, well, Phil, this is a great question, and I knew somebody was going to bring it up, so of course it would be you, but because you're thinking in those angles, which you have to think about. Why is in Mark's gospel, in all of the gospels to a certain extent, but in Mark's gospel, Jesus is always telling everybody, don't say anything. The passage that would have been on today, had it not been for Transfiguration Sunday, is my very favorite story in Luke's gospel. Mark's gospel. 1:40 through 45, the leper. Hey, if you choose to, or if you elect, as a Presbyterian would say, if you elect, you could heal me. And he goes, I do. And the word there is, he has pity on him, but there's another word used there that he's irritated. Jesus is irritated. I always think that's a great discussion. Why pity? Irritated. Pity? Irritated. Irritated. But I love that story. But there again, when he's finished, he says, let's just... Well, that's a great question. Why would Jesus not tell him not to say? Yeah, well... yeah, obviously. Until it's yeah.
He wants people to,
Yeah.
he doesn't want them saying, oh, he's gonna die, and it's like, just keep that to yourself.
It is an interesting aspect, but my favorite discussion is, there's a whole book on it, as you would imagine. But in Mark's gospel, it's C.H. Dodd, the Messianic secret is that Jesus, and if you read Mark's gospel all the way through, he says, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. And what do? They tell. And all throughout, they say, who is this guy? Who is this guy that does this? Who is this guy that can has authority over unclean spirits? Who is this guy that can calm the sea? Who is this guy that can heal people? Who is this guy that speaks with authority? And since we already know the story, we've read it, we're always going, Messiah. He's a Messiah, y'all. He's a Messiah. But the secret is there until the very end, where he's on the cross, and the messianic notion is that all these other things point to this, but where he is Messiah is when he is on the cross. And that, lo and behold, the person that gets to announce that is a Roman guard who is not one of his followers. Now, again, I have another friend who would say it's Mark's humor that the disciples never get to get the punchline, but some outsider does. So this comes back around to Ashlyn's irritation with Moses not getting in. So here, in this story, I guess you should be as irritated here. The disciples don't get to go, hey, we know who he is. It's a centurion from pagan who gets to go.
Not on the inside.
Yeah.
They know who he is.
Yeah.
All over the world.
Yeah.
And they're still afraid to say.
But they're still afraid to say.
Like, tell everybody when I say nothing.
Yeah, that's right. In the end, because
Nobody was there, I ain't saying a word.
in Mark 16 verse 8, and the boy dressed in white says to the women, "Hey, go back and tell his disciples." And they say, and they left in silence and fear, and said nothing to anyone. Again, Mark's humor. That all throughout the gospel, Jesus says, hey, don't tell anybody. Everybody goes tells. And then at the end, he says, go tell. And they go, no, I'm not going to do that.
Nobody would believe.
It's kind of, and it does kind of point to the irony of discipleship, that how many times we think we have it, and we don't. You know, I mean, on the other sides, it gives me a little hope. I mean, if they can't get it, hey man, maybe, I mean, I'm as bad as they are. I mean, you know, I mean, and they're still his disciples, so maybe there's hope for me too. I mean, okay. So, let me keep up with my time. Oh, goodness gracious. Here we are. Here's the thing that I have, and again, this is minimal. But here you say, verse 4, and there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, and they were talking with Jesus. Elijah with Moses. All these years later. Well, Matthew and Luke say Moses and Elijah. I'm like, okay, why would you, I mean, I understand that order. I understand Moses, then Elijah, because he came first, he came second. My head works that way. This is how you do things, you know? But Mark switches around, and then thinking, if Mark's gospel's first, these other two wrote off of him, which is, I totally believe, I am totally convinced that Mark was first, and that these other two, but they took a notion to reverse them, you know? Interesting. Yeah.
Do you ever wonder what Elijah and Moses were talking to Jesus about?
Great question. Doesn't Luke address that? Great. Let's see.
It says they appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure,
Yeah.
which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem.
Yeah, that's what they say. That's what Luke goes on and tells us. So, you know, interesting. But now the others don't, I mean, they don't tell that. They just say they're hanging out with him, having a conversation. It's an interesting story. And I know, I think I may have told you this before, but most people, I mean, you know, it was a year ago to remember it. But that this passage, a lot of people argue is a post-resurrection story and got jammed back in here. Yeah, he has already risen, and they're up there with this. Now, to me, I mean, and maybe it's I'm too ingrained in the text as we know it for me to kind of fall out of that, you know, and to go, oh yeah, I think I like that, or I don't know if I like that or not. I'm too ingrained in this.
We would say, oh no, that's not possible.
I don't know. I don't know. I find it interesting to think about, but the writer Slater, yeah. Well, it'd have been Mark, ultimately, yeah, I'm sure that the other two would have just written off of him. And I'm not saying I'm buying it. I'm also saying that I would have to think why.
Well, would be the point afterwards, because they already know, like, especially
Yeah.
if they put a
Yeah.
cloud coming over.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. You know?
And he says,
Is it-
don't tell anyone until.
Yeah, until the Son of Man.
Resurrected.
I mean, that would just have to be tinkered with, I'm sure. But I'm just like, it gives you something to think
You
about.
are telling the story at
Yeah.
current times.
Yeah.
So
But I
to
do.
make them convert.
Yeah.
believe.
But I just want, I mean, that's just a thing that's out there, so I just share that. Not to confuse anybody, but I mean, just to say, that's an interesting thought. Y'all can think about it too. And I have no idea why they reverse the names. I'm just like, it just one more time confirms in my head that even though I do this for a long time, I always come up with these things that I go, it's taking me this long to notice that? Interesting. Yeah. So, Jesus goes up the mountain and is transfigured. He's changed before them. You see these two historic figures who come to him, and ultimately, Luke tells us, not Mark, but Luke tells us, hey, it's about his coming departure in Jerusalem. And, you know, his face is turned toward Jerusalem from here. I'm pretty sure that's Luke that tells us that. So he's headed on to Jerusalem, and this kind of marks his march. So what does this passage mean for us? To flip it over. Why is this important? It's so important we make a day of it in the church calendar.
Does everyone see him transform? I mean, because, you know, Moses, he came down off the mountain and everybody saw.
Yeah,
So does he come
It's-
down the mountain transformed, or does he
Great
come down the
question.
mountain and is back to his normal because he hasn't? You know,
That's a great question. That is,
Most people, I mean.
it does. We are
following
not
him,
told.
3 people left and came back and like, oh, wow.
And don't tell anybody. Yes. Yeah, so if you come back down the mountain and Jesus goes, wow, he's sporting some new threads. And they're like, yeah, we can't talk about it. We can't.
He looks different.
Yeah, he's just like, are you sure that's him? You know, yeah, I know, yeah, yeah, we can't tell you. If we tell you, we have to kill you. I mean, that is a really good question. I don't know. I mean, you see, that's why I love this when we talk about text, because y'all think about things that you get in your place and you just can't step out of it to hear another view. And that's why I love having these conversations, or even reading about text. Like, oh, some people think this is a post-resurrection. Not that I'm going to agree with it or disagree with it, but it just helps push me to other places till I go, ooh, I've thought this for a long time. Maybe I need to rethink some things and the like. Because I have to tell you this too. I cannot read the story. I cannot read the story and leave it in just this place. Jesus went up a mountain, then they come back down. The only way I can ever understand the story from where I stand is that what he does next. And it even comes up in the service today, in the sermon. I can't leave the story alone, personally, because what's the first thing he does when he comes down? He heals. Thank you, sir. Yeah, I knew you would probably know. But he heals a little boy who has an unclean spirit, and the disciples can't do it. And his dad comes to Jesus and goes, "Hey, your disciples can't do this. Would you fix this for me?" And Jesus heals this little boy, and I'm like, I can never separate those two stories. That Jesus goes up the mountain and leave him there. He has to come back down the mountain, and the first thing he does is heal someone. That is just not enough to have a mountaintop experience. And it's not enough to just go, ooh, this was really cool. Peter's going, hey, let's just stay up here, you know?
That's not enough to come to church on.
Is it? Well, yeah, yeah, that's right. You have to go out. Transfiguration takes you somewhere, is ultimately the issue. you're right, that we can't just have, well, you know, I come from a different tradition, and we always talked about those, you would go to youth camp every summer, and then you have big altar calls at the end of the week, and everybody be down there, and then the youth pastor, whoever it was that time to talk, would say, now, you've had these mountaintop experiences, but you're gonna go back home tomorrow, and you can't just let this go, you know, and go back to the same old things that you did. And then, and we always go, you're right, and then we would. And then, so, but then but transfiguration pushes us not to stay up there. You know, and from our notion of the story, we know the whole story, and we go, Jesus, just stay up there, because where you're headed, it's not going to be pretty. Yeah. Yeah, right. So he has to come back down, and the first thing he does is he takes care of somebody who's broken.
But even for our journey, the ones closest to us still didn't believe it when he, or still didn't
Yeah.
stand up to it for him.
Okay. So what's that say about us?
So it's, I mean, that's your journey, that's
Mhm.
you believe.
Yeah. Maybe it's always that faith's always a struggle.
And there's one favorite that believed or
Yeah.
didn't stand up for him.
Yeah. No, he kind of botched it, but then I mean he goes on from there to he kind of makes up for it in Acts. He does pretty well in Acts.
So maybe everybody
I'll give him
hope
credit.
for us,
Yeah.
Eventually we'll catch on.
That- There you, okay. The transfiguration means something for us. That there are moments that we have that are mountaintop moments. We do have them, and y'all could probably think of which ones they are in your life, and how they move us. But do they move us? When we have those moments, we have to really consider that they push us to something beyond ourselves. That we just don't have to, ooh, that was a good moment, you know, and made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, and whoo, that was great. But if they don't push us to something else beyond ourselves, to go take care of the hurting, what are they for? Maybe. And now maybe between now and next year, something will push me off of that. After all these years, it's going to be really hard because I'm kind of like frozen in that. But it's something to think about for all of us. So let's think about that today as we take communion and break bread together. Let's pray. Gracious God, we give thanks for these texts of transfiguration, that Jesus is changed and comes down that mountain to heal and to head to the cross, that we all might know wholeness together. May we live in that this day and always. It's in your